like bloods, when people have gone to, dress bloods, that falls under COSHH as well. Any, spillages and stuff like that. There is the aspect of that the spillages could be on the floor, they could splatter on you, you need to have PPE and stuff like that. So that is the biological term. I thought I should sort of talk about it a little bit because I understand a lot of people sort of kind of ask me, where does it stop? So always think there must be a physical aspect to it. Uh, and there will always be signs that the pictograms, we migrated from the European ones. I think if you find material from long ago, you had orange looking funny ones, which were from the EU. We've migrated from that and we're back to these, which are for the UK. And they just are symbols to just sort of highlight what kind of risk you might have. And they might vary. You might find they might come with numbers on each one of them, three or four, or sometimes just one. That's when you refer to the European chart that can tell you what each one of them means. If you can go to the next, that's all. It's fine. All right, and our common effects of these hazardous substances is usually skin irritation. It could be asthma if you've inhaled it, losing consciousness if you have stayed for a long time. That's where the time weighted averages come in. Cancer, or what you'll find most terms that are used in COSHH, they use carcinogenic, which means cancerous. And half the time they don't happen there and there, they happen over a period of time. Maybe people have retired, they start having a cancer, they can't understand where it has come from. There's also infection and bacteria from other microbiological agents. I'm going to talk in depth, so I'm just going to whiz through this a bit, but I'm going to talk about it a bit more later. So next. All right. I understand we have got a whole bunch of very highly skilled people here. Can anybody explain what is the aim of COSHH within their sector? I just want three people, if anyone can volunteer. Can anyone volunteer to tell me what is the aim of COSHH in their sector? There's no wrong answers here. We're all here to learn. If anyone can give me an example, guys. You don't have COSHH in your areas. Anyone can give me an example of COSHH in their area and its aim? No? Personally, do you want to give us an example in your area? You're a consultant, so you've got tons of examples.
Hello?
Oh, yes.
Yes, COSHH means control of substances hazardous to health, and we can find COSHH in different forms, which can be liquid, solid, or gaseous forms. For example,
Oh,
carbon monoxide. That's the
mhm.
example that I can give you today. Thank you.
And where do you work, by the way, Chima?
Sorry, I
Where,
didn't
where,
get that.
where do you work? What sector again? Remind me.
Hello?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I'm not sure if it's my phone. I don't know. I'm hearing some sounds here.
Yeah, I think it's more Moline. Who's speaking? Okay, it's Moline. You need to mute, Moline. Oh, there we go. All right, I was asking, which sector do you work?
Okay, I'm a consultant, so I've
Oh,
visited different organizations, including the NHS construction. So yeah, that's when I've just realized that it's important to know the forms of COSHH, that it comes in liquid, gas, and solid.
okay. So in any of your encounters, have you ever encountered where you had to deal with COSHH with an area maybe unregulated very well?
Yeah, I think I deal with COSHH on a daily basis as I'm doing some audits or some health and safety inspections. We always check the storage area for the COSHH. We check all the control measures. If there's COSHH in place, the symbols, we check if there's need for spill kits, spill trays. We check if there's safety data sheets that comes along with the products, which is actually a legal requirement. So there are some control measures that we check every time there's COSHH, depending with the type of substance.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you. That is very, very helpful. All right. So the reason why I wanted to sort of learn about what you deal with is because then I can relate and explain. Because the aim of this course or this little refresher is to ensure that when we look at risk assessments, they should be suitable and adequate. That's the word that is used by the HSE. They should be suitable and adequate. And one of the key things is finding and understanding how COSHH is sort of looked at from a professional point of view helps for you to understand maybe this little course that I've been given they need to do a little bit more work on it. So the whole purpose of COSHH is to enforce and raise safety standards within the workplace by reducing accidents involving chemicals and hazardous substances. And I want to give you an incident. This happened like last month in my workplace. And what happened is we get contracted for jobs that we can't do ourselves. And this can be done by Estates Department, which is not part of our department, but they have a duty to let us know if contractors are coming in. But in these circumstances, because the staff that were doing it then ended up leaving, there was a gap. So we were not involved. And their job, because our hospitals are like 3 stories, 4 stories all the time. So on top there, we had an accident, a slip a few months ago. We had a slip and we realized that we needed to make sure we made the surfaces anti-slip where the workers who come and, work on the aircons, because all our aircons are up there, our air handling units are up there, and some old buildings have got water tanks up there. So estate staff are up and down there all the time. So it rained and one of them fell and we realized we needed to put anti-slip or sort of a pathway for them that is non-slip for them to use. All fair and good. They end up getting a contractor, and this contractor doesn't do a COSHH assessment. So what they did, like I said before, we've got air cons up there, we've got air handling units. So air handling units have got different types. This particular one, which is next to the door that you enter that whole roof space and walk through, but that was exactly where the route they were going to do the anti-slip. And what they did there was that they just painted. But this air handling unit, for it to work, it sucks air from the environment, from the open environment, pulls it down, picks some air in the ward, mixes it with cooled down air, and then to the right temperature that is set by the machine, and then blows it back in the ward. Mind you, this ward does not have windows. It's only reliant on mechanical ventilation, which is your air handling unit. So now they've painted there, it's wet and all the fumes, and this compound is not a normal paint, it's a volatile organic compound, which has got acrylites. And these acrylites are being sucked into the air handling unit. It's cooling them down, mixing it with the air in that ward, and then throwing it back in there. Slowly, people started feeling faint. And that's when people raised alarm. The ward was evacuated. This was emergency department, mind you, and it was evacuated. It had to go to the patient transport area. But these people had failed to do a COSHH assessment. And eventually, when they brought one, when we asked them one, it was a copy and paste of the safety data sheet. And at that point, that COSHH assessment is not suitable and adequate. Because yes, you've written down, you put all the pictogram, the hazard pictograms, you put that, yes, it's going to paint and so on. But how have you related that course to the actual job? So in these circumstances, they were supposed to walk around maybe that area they're going to work. There's no way they can do a quotation without going up there. They went there, they did a quotation. They were supposed to identify, all right, we're going to paint here. Please tell me, how does this air handling unit work? Then they were supposed to understand, oh, it sucks A, and but we're going to paint here, so it's likely going to suck the A we're going to be painting here. So what do? We power it down for 2 hours. Tell the ward, please find fans for the next 2 hours while least this dries. So that's what your coach should have been, their coach should have been saying. But it missed all these fundamentals. And it was an incident. If it was too late, somebody could have possibly suffocated. Something very simple like painting and anti-slip. So that's why I say when you do your course, it's not just about putting information. It's about understanding the task, number one. And then understanding how it can affect the task. Whatever chemicals are being used, how can they affect the task? And I want to drop something very simple home so you to understand. Okay, I always do this, and I'm sorry if I sound like I'm talking to people, because that's how I teach. I usually teach people with no background. So if I talk, I'm not, trying to belittle you, but I would like to give sometimes the most simplest examples to prove a point. And one of the examples is, does anybody remember the Unilever Sunlight advert from Zimbabwe? I think most of you are from Zimbabwe or Africa. It used to be used across Africa. Does anyone still remember it? So what they used to do, they used to take the sunlight liquid or dishwashing liquid, and then they would, put one frothy area. They'll put one in one area where the dishes are, and they'll also put another empty one with frothy water. And people would wash their dishes, put it in the frothy area, then put it onto the rack, and then it goes, boing, Does anybody remember that? No? But look, a lot of people in my nation took that literally. They would wash the dishes, put it in a frothy one, and put it there. Now that you've done cosh, it dries with that froth there. What happens when they put soup? When they start putting that beef stew? Can anybody tell me what do you think will happen? It will be soapy. You might not taste it. Thank you, Chipochasin. But then that soap, remember, if you look at the back of it, it's got a triangle and a few numbers. In the long term, when people have stomach cancer, they don't understand where it's coming from. So it is imperative for them not to follow the advert, but to wash completely and rinse thoroughly and put it there. But that's a typical example of COSHH. So they've just given us a hazard sign there and told us don't consume, don't do that. But they've never told you, they don't know how many uses you have for it. So they have not written anything more. So now it is our job then to do a course assessment, individual, in your own home. Okay, make sure all the dishes are thoroughly rinsed so that nobody in the long term has any colon cancer or any other carcinogenic stimulated cancer. What's going on here? Sorry, my battery is crying there. Put it on. Okay, fantastic. So that's a simple thing, but look, in that sense, you then need to be able to tell a grandmother in the rural areas. She should be able to read your coach assessment and understand the dangers of doing that or not rinsing thoroughly. So it should be task based. And for that to, if you achieve that, you're also indirectly reducing accidents that may be involved with that by identifying the hazards and substances determining the risk associated. So there's a need to define that those two to be able to have a very competent and look at me trying to go next. Please go next, please. A competent and sufficient risk assessment. And remember, everyone is responsible and may be held accountable for their actions. This is in your Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, which gives the employer and the employee responsibilities, remember? So it would be really important to understand, even if you are a user, some people are users, I'm usually teaching users, but also to those who are accountable. It's everybody. Please go next. All right, so employers have got a duty to reduce risks from hazardous substance in the first instance. When it is not possible and necessary, they should be able to provide employees with PPE. Then should be directed through a COSHH assessment, risk assessments of task, control measures, monitoring health and exposure if necessary, information and supervision, which is very, very important. But I would like to put a very important thing out there. As health and safety professionals, it's not our jobs. It depends with your job description, but most cases, it's not your job to go and do COSHH assessments for everybody. Certain jobs need people to be able to do risk assessments on their own. And the argument I've always had is that if I was to do risk assessments for everybody, I won't be able to do anything else. But also, you're not, because sometimes you work for a different company, you've got that company coming in, they should be providing those COSHH assessments for you. And as a professional, you should look at it and get satisfied that it's adequate and sufficient. So don't ever shy away from saying, please provide me a suitable and sufficient COSHH assessment, please. And these items usually come with an SOP. And if their companies, ask them to bring that to you too as well, so that you can understand what mixing is taking place, what's going to take place, you know. And if you can, ask the employees. That's why it's important. If you read the risk assessment, management of health and safety in 1999, which is your risk assessment legislation, it will tell you that you should involve employees when you are doing your risk assessment, because usually they know more. So you could call me as a health and safety professional. Some of you are consultants. Sometimes you go to a sector you've never been before, but because of the knowledge, they expect you to know. So sometimes when you do a risk assessment, you need to go to the shop floor and ask the people who do the job, what does your job entail? Can you show me what you'll be doing? And then what will you be moving? Can you show me what you're moving? So that from there, then you can be able to formulate a risk assessment that addresses the activities that they do. And where third companies is also available, because a lot of subcontracting happens. Get the information from them. You don't have to write anything because you don't know what they're doing. You don't know what stuff they have. What if they've got an under 16 and you've just written a COSHH assessment? Because under 16s have got their own kind of COSHH assessment, because you have to be more careful. Or whatever activities they are doing, they've got. So it's important to get information from other people before you formulate your actual COSHH assessment. Uh, Take responsible care of your own safety and not to do anything that would endanger others. Cooperate with employer and complete all necessary training. And I think it is imperative to say, look, if you find the COSHH assessments that are inadequate, find out how these people who have filled it in have been trained. And if you are a professional, you might want to advise them to take them for training. Again, if you are the one to assess them and look at them and you find them inadequate, you can give a few examples, but then encourage in writing to send these people in training, because the culture of this country is that health and safety in the past wasn't very much of a big issue until COVID came. And before, anyone used to do health and safety. So if I got my cousin into the job, you'd then send them to the health and safety, because in the past, you used to just fill forms. And they slip, trips and falls. Is the cost cupboard clogged? Tick, tick, tick. That was the job before. But it has really expanded into a gigantic monster. And now there's need for trained individuals, qualified individuals. And as professionals, never shy away from telling companies to tell them, look, there is need for training for COSHH assessment, um, filling in or writing. And make sure that there's proper use of PPE and as it comes. And the COSHH assessment concentrates on hazards and risks from hazardous substances in the workplace. Remember that the health hazards are not limited to substances labeled as hazardous. And again, that's where my point comes with the activity. Some harmful substances can be produced by the process being performed, e.g., for example, wood dust from sanding. So when the wood itself, if you are given a piece of wood, it's not written hazardous, is it? It's not. But when they start using it, cutting it, grinding it, and so on, it's going to produce a lot of wood dust, which then becomes a COSHH. Something because dust itself falls under COSHH. And then like items like silica dust from tile cutting, which is also carcinogenic as well. So, and I think everybody knows this. And that is my point. I think one of the reasons why we ended up here was because we were sharing a number of COSHH assessments. The 5-step process doesn't change on any kind of risk assessment, be it COSHH, be it manual handling, be it just a normal general workplace risk assessment. The 5 fundamentals have to be in your COSHH assessment. If you do not see them in there, you yourself as a professional should think something is missing. And again, that's where I'll say the homework hasn't been done adequately. Because you have not looked at who's going to be, what is the hazard? You probably know what the hazard is. But if I look at what's COSHH hazard, it goes back to just have record on your findings, review. It's the same over and over. And I'm going to give you one of the easiest, maybe say an oxygen cylinder. It's used in clinical, it's used everywhere. An oxygen cylinder, okay, let's do. I never encountered an oxygen cylinder or any kind of cylinder. The gas one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gas and oxygen cylinders. I've worked with those.
So what do you think are your, okay, which one do you want to talk about? Choose one.
I'll talk about the gas cylinder.
Okay,
LPG
what
gas.
kind of gas?
Yeah.
LPG gas. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Okay.
We're using this chart. We're using this chart. Okay. Before we use this chart, what are you doing with the LPG gas?
Selling LPG, selling gas.
You sell gas.
I'll say using it for cooking. Home cooking, home consumption, home cooking. Yeah, I'll say home cooking. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, it's a good. I was talking about this when I went to Zimbabwe. Okay, great. So what are our risks?
Risk of explosion.
Yes.
Risk of cold burns. Because
Yes.
gas is not cold burns.
Yes, you could get frostbite. That's the word we usually use. But yeah, that's the one.
Oh, okay. And risk of fire.
Yeah.
Because gas no fight a motor. So that's another hazard.
All right. So where will you be using this gas? So let's now try and relate these risks. Well, this is what we have. So usually you find people in the COSHH assessment, they just write that, which is okay. But now, if you get somebody who's never gone to finished school, he looks at it and says, okay, everybody knows that it explodes. But now we want to look at an example. So what kind of environments do you work with this?
Can you say that again?
What kind of environment? So where are you when you're working with this? What kind?
I'll say in the a public place kitchen, like say a hospital.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. So the ones in the hospitals are usually outside, and you have piping that comes inside, and you would have it caged in that area and locked. So now we want to identify risks. Number one, even if we know that it should be caged and locked, it's not everybody. So number one, the risk is that it could have people. Remember, in hospital, you have med people, you have sick people, you have anyone. So people can do anything. So you have to really think about it. So if we're at a hospital, From outside, we have to ensure it's locked so that we don't have the public unauthorized access by public or anyone else, which can result into, fatalities, explosions, and so on, people meddling with it and explosions and stuff like that. And then we can think of internally, what risks do we have internally? I know I might be going too deep here, but look, internally, you might need to have stop valves. You need that because if there is ever a fire, you might need to have a stop valve and lock it and stop and cut the supply of gas. And when you are using it, and then there are people who decant these things. Remember, when you are having gas outside, sometimes you have in our trust we have porters sometimes filling it in. They're trained by Bob to fill it in and stuff like that. That's where the first part comes in. So when you are addressing porters in this time or staff that fill it in, you are now talking about the coupling process. They should have adequate gloving, they should have adequate training. You can't just go there without training. You need to know if it's shut, you need to do this, you need to open that. So there's training that comes in out of it. There's also need for them to be wearing adequate PPE. When you're talking about the coupling process, you then identify the hazard. You might have frost in there. If there's any flammable liquid nearby, there could be an explosion. So that's when you are now talking about there should be no smoking nearby, there should be signs nearby, and then you should also talk about the process of handling the issue, how they handle it with proper anti-frost gloves, and so on and so on and so on. You've identified the hazard, you've decided who might be harmed. So we talked about the public, we talked about the people who do the coupling. We talked about the chefs in the main kitchen if there's a fire. Evaluate the risk, decide on the precautions, and then you put your precautions. You need stop valves, you need SOPs, you need training, record your findings. If all this is in place, you review it. Is it working? It's fine. The process is the same. I don't know if I've made any sense around this, but you have to break it down to the task. Think of the people who might use it. How are they using it? And what risks are they going to be involved with it? Okay. So sometimes we just write frosting, explosion, and stuff like that, and we move on. And here I am, I've just come from Nigeria, and you know what? I don't know much here, and they just put me there, they give me this risk assessment, they talk about explosion. I don't even know how will it explode. Well, sometimes you're looking at this tank, and in your thought, you're thinking it might just explode. So if you write it down for them in layman's terms, they should understand, explosions happen if there's a fire. So if they see someone smoking, well, sometimes somebody will just walk up to you and start talking stories and they're smoking and you're trying to do your job. But if you have seen your COSHH assessment and you know that there's no need fire here, you're going to tell them, please move away. There's going to be there might be an explosion. You lock it and stuff like that. So this is kind of trying to look at the task for the most ordinary person to look at your COSHH assessment and be able to understand what their duties are at that point in time. Do you have any questions around this? Let's go to the next slide.
There was a hand up from Lorna. I'm not sure if it was a hand up or something.
No, that was a mistake. Sorry.
All right. So let's go to the next slide. So there are a few things that come with COSHH assessment, and you're professionals, and you might already know this. Number one is your material safety data sheet. You might find some just call it a safety data sheet. It's the same thing. And you have your COSHH risk assessment, but you also have what you have called your inventory. Okay. These are all required by your COSHH regulations. You should have an inventory. So an inventory is a list of all the chemicals that can be in a cupboard, and then you have your material safety data sheet for each one of them, and you have your risk assessment. Does anybody know why we need these three items? You can give me a scenario. Does anybody know why we need these three items? Okay, I'll give you a live example. Like I told you, I work with hospitals, but I also work with community sites of our hospitals. They've got more than 42. So one of them called, what is that place? Docking Hospital. Docking is a community spa site in Surrey there. Just at the end of COVID, when I joined this trust, They had a mental health patient. And you know what this mental health patient did? They took an alcohol gel, you know, the ones we were using, alcohol gels to, you know, wipe our hands and stuff. They took it and drank the whole thing and just sat there. But luckily enough, we had done a lot of course work with docking, and they understood the fundamentals. So they took the safety data sheet, they took the risk assessment, and they gave it to the ambulance people who then, you know, went with the siren to the doctors. If it's anything deadlier, it means the difference between life and death. Well, if you don't have a material safety data sheet, if you don't have a COSHH assessment, the doctors are going to start with your temperature, then they're going to go to your heart rate, then they're going to go to ECG, try to figure out and you're dying. But if they go there, then they see, okay, it's got acrylite, it's got methylmalonate, I don't know those funny names that come with these chemicals. They know for us to neutralize, we need to do this. We need to give him this, we might need to give him that. And while there might be damage, but his life or her life is saved. And the reason why you have the same inventory list and the safety data sheet and the COSHH chemical is maybe if there's a fire. Remember that fire we saw? Some chemicals, if you put water, they explode. Magnesium and stuff like that. They need foam and other stuff like that. So if there's a fire at docking, you take that inventory list and the material safety data sheet, you give it to the fire brigade. So they will look at that, they'll know, oh, these chemicals, they're fine. They are water, you can use water. Oh, we can't use water here, let's use foam. So this is the importance of these things. So material safety data sheet, somebody has a splash in their eyes, before the doctor start putting the torch and stuff, if the doctor looks and says this agent, that is blinding, they can neutralize it quickly with any other medicines they are using. And that person's sight can be saved. That is the importance of these things. And I know I'm talking to people who are professionals, you probably know it already. But it is important that you know, your safety data sheets, they are all found in chemicals, your mixtures, proprietary products. That means even your own products, proprietary products for your own company, if you're working for your own company, reaction products and intermediates. Please, can I go next? So again, this is the process I've talked about, that decide who might be harmed. It's important to highlight who might be harmed. It could be the supervisor, it could be the workers, it could be anyone who comes to the site. Be able to put that together and also look at how often and how long will someone be working with the substance. So remember, I was talking about that paint. It's a volatile organic compound. Even though they're in the open space, they might need to wear a mask, FFP3, because they are really close to it. And you might need to figure out how long should they be working in that environment to look at time-weighted limits and exposure limits. And who else could be exposed for other contractors? There could be other contractors working there. Remember, it's up there. You've got the air handling units. You've got some people painting. You've got some people trying to fix the air cons and stuff like that. And think of how accidental exposure could be and put control measures. Remember, we talked about the accidental exposure that happened in my workplace recently. The HSE got involved and we had to give answers. And luckily enough, in this case, we already have a process. When I started 3 years ago, we started a process of assessing every contractor. And the person who actually forgot to get the COSHH assessment had gone. So there were gaps. It wasn't because the system, but there was gaps and there was learning from it. So it really died down very quickly. But we could show them a process of what we were doing and other contractors we were dealing with, what we were demanding when we were retaining other risk assessment. But in this particular case, there was a gap because of changing of staff. But the HSE got involved because staff reported it. Okay? So it's very important to be able to be on the point. Don't be shy to ask for more. That is our job. Okay? Some people are failing to join the meeting, Shipo is saying. I don't know if you can look at that, Colin.
Okay,
Then.
okay, let me Let me look. There's no one in the lobby. It's fine. Let me chat with
Okay.
them in the WhatsApp group and see what is the problem.
All right. So everybody knows this hierarchy. It works. It's got different names, but this is the most common one: elimination, substitution, engineering controls, administrative controls, and PPE. And one of the things when we do our COSHH assessments, we have to think of it. Do we really need to use this particular substance if it is if it is hazardous? So remember, I'm gonna go back to my example of painting a non-slip walkway. They could have used alternative paints, which could have been a bit more expensive, but it would have cost them less because then you don't have to power down, they're non-toxic and stuff like that without volatile organic compounds and stuff like that. You can eliminate the product entirely and put something else, and then the risk is entirely removed. And that's part of the substitution purposes as well, looking at an alternative available, you know. And then if not, we have to engineer the controls. Can we change the process and avoid the using it? So you can put controls in place. And that is also almost the same with administrative. If it's not possible, then control measures must be put in place. Like if we cannot change this paint, they could have then powered down the air handling unit and then wait for it to dry. Also put fans if possible to dry it faster, or any other, agents, chemicals that can make it dry faster so that there's less time. And if not, then you ask people to use PPE and try to put adequate controls in place. So this is the same triangles. I think everybody is quite aware of this triangle. Go to the next, please. So there is the personal protective equipment regulation. So all our regulations work together, people. Your risk assessment regulation will never contradict your COSHH regulation. It will never contradict your PPE regulations 2022. So every employer, so they work together. They work together, they complement one another, and every employer shall ensure a suitable personal protective equipment is provided to his employees who may be exposed to a risk to their health and safety while at work. It's mandatory. So they changed this to 2022 because now, as an employer, before you could ask a contractor to bring their own PPE. It was sort of the contractor's job. So now you have to be clear, even doing your contracts on your service level agreement, that they should bring it. If you don't do that, you should be providing it. This is what the law is saying. It's easier in healthcare settings where everyone can be provided a mask, everyone can be provided a glove. But in the past, they'll say the agency must bring their own stuff. But now they're saying you as employer, even if it's agency, bring it. So these were the few changes they did. you know so it is every employer's a responsibility to be able to provide PPE. Please, let's go to the next. All right, so you see these signs very much in our COSHH assessment, and I know people love putting the X's and stuff like that. Yes, that is correct. Let's put those X's, but we should have explained properly. Whenever we find the section to explain the risks and stuff, let's put the 5 steps in there. And then these 5 steps will then direct us on what we should be putting on the X. Because remember, they are not writing to you. You guys know what you're putting the X on. But you might have Inos here from Africa, and I'm just coming, I'm trying to make it here in life. I have my first job. I look at these X's and I don't even understand. But if I read there, then I know the dangers, then I know why I should really do this. And never be shy when you see any contractors who are misbehaving, to stop them. Talk to their supervisor. Half the time, they might be cocky. Unless if it's too dangerous, that's when you stop them immediately. Go to their supervisors and tell them, look, your staff are not wearing, masks. They're not wearing gloves. Can you please correct this? Write it in email, follow up. You should never be shy. In my workplace, when contractors see me, they run. I don't mind. I'm not here to make friends. They run. If they didn't have helmets, they'll have them. Because I would like to see compliance. And if you don't comply, I'll tell the capital projects team, please don't bring these people back here. They're an endangerment to our staff and themselves and our reputation. So do not be shy. That is your job. Eventually, you start joking. When they know you and your character, they will know you and they will start joking with you, but actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. Okay? Let's go to the next one. As an employee, you must ensure this is for employees. They must comply with PPE, use and adequately and correctly. They should have the right sizes and right fits. They should, also do examinations of whether it's all fitting and it's well. Take responsible care of the PPE after use. That's even adequate disposal. And you know what? Being trained to do adequate jobs is right for you before you do the right thing. Uh, and make sure you are trying to do it. So let's go to the next one. Right. I like to talk about this very much because this is how the UK's COSHH assessment largely look like. Um, and sometimes I feel the way it's structured, it doesn't give us a chance to write more. I used to feel this. I'm like, why should I? Everything is there already. Why should I write more? But I tell you, I kid you not, if it stretches, let it stretch. You have to write the 5 steps should be in there. Yeah. I don't know if you can zoom it in a bit. There is a section for you to write. It looks so small. Expand it if you have to. So you find right underneath those pictograms, if you go about 4 rows down, where is the substance located? What is the substance used for? Remember, so that's where you need to ask the employees. So that's why sometimes we say people who do the job should do the assessment. And then you should have sight of it and then say, I think there's a few things missing here. Because now, right there, what is the substance used for? They should be able to tell you, when we are using it, we're going to be painting on the roof. We're going to be painting our walkways and stuff like that. How substance is used. They want the explanation how it's used, and that includes even stuff like mixing. You know, there is a criteria they always say because most chemicals are exothermic. They produce heat. That's why there is always that question whether to pour water or pour chemicals first. Okay. So it's important to do this. So one of the things I did in my workplace when I came and I reviewed the COSHH policy. And one of my key targets was this template. I wanted to create a template where we can be able to put the risks and the controls clearly. Because I feel that somehow this circulated all over England and Britain. And wherever you go, you find it like this, very incomplete. It's only when you have the problem with HSE then says, bring your risk assessment. Then you're all going to be questioned. Your risk assessment is inadequate. You didn't cater for this. What about this task? Did you look at it? Why is it not in the risk assessment? So if you have the power and autonomy, highlight it, create more space, because you can do whatever you want. Whoever made this at this time was correct, but now things are more stringent. You need to identify, create the space. So ours has got now a space. It looks like this, but you have a lot of space for you to write the risks and what is used for and what are the risks and how they can be mitigated. And then you have all the tick box exercises down there. Okay. All right, and it's important to review assessment, especially if an event has happened. You need to review it. It's not a crime not to capture anything, guys. Sometimes you might miss something as an oversight. That's when the review process comes in. Put it in there, do an alert, do a toolbox alert, so that both sides or any other side or any other parts of the company understand what has been changed. So in short, I would say make sure that you have your 5 steps in there. Identify the hazard, who might be harmed and how, what control measures are in place, what further controls need to be put in place, review and assess. This has to be in place in whatever COSHH assessment you do. And also, you need to be task oriented. Go in there, ask them, what are you doing? How is the job going to show me? Even observe them if you have to, and make notes. That will allow you to do a proper COSHH risk assessment. If you are using certain chemicals, are they being transported from one point to point B? Be able to understand what that process means. Okay, before they go into the car, what are the risks when it's traveling? What are the risks? How are you mitigating when you are now unloading it? What are the risks? And stuff like that. So I think these are the most imperative parts to put. There's one thing just filling a paper, and what is heavy about filling a paper is putting your name to it. Okay? Because now you've said, I'm the professional, I've put Enos Mukazaweta, and you've put an incomplete COSHH assessment. When things go wrong, if you go to a coronary court, and I'm going to tell you something about coronary courts. One employee, I used to work for Ethics Partnership University Trust as a contractor for Venn Group, as a consultant for Venn Group. They brought somebody back all the way from South Africa who had been retired 10 years ago. This incident happened 10 years ago. So there is no hiding. So it's imperative that what you are doing now, if you are going to be called 10 years, or 10 years later, you should be able to point out what has been done. But if everything is okay, they don't even call you, because then they shift the blame, they shift the focus to something else. Okay? We never mix cleaning substances with possible, because again, remember, some can be outpoured by water, some are exacerbated by water, some may be, the chemical may exacerbate it, some may not. So that's why they say don't mix them. Avoid lifting and pouring from heavy aqueous bulk containers. This is when you are talking about the movement, if you're using a lot of chemicals. When diluting, always add the concentrated liquid to the water. To water, not water to concentrate. Remember what I was talking about? So when the fire brigade came to Tinjuan, they came and poured water into the concentrate, and it created more heat, which ended up in a big explosion. That's why they use that. When handling substances, especially concentrate, always wear the protective clothing provided. And you'll find that people have worked in places for a long time, they don't want to do this. And I find that as I become friendlier, they want me to expect them to tolerate it. But I always remind them. I'm like, George, you're missing something, my friend. You know what? Because people, even builders, you find them on 3 floors, they don't have a helmet. I've been a builder for 10 years. That's what they'll tell you. But it's imperative that they are wearing the right PPE always. Regardless of their experience, it is our job to point it out, even right or not. I created a ticket at my workplace. I created a ticket and I give the supervisor. I use it as a record because I've been to 2 coronary courts. The lack of evidence is really stressing. You need to have evidence. Okay? Only use cleaning substances in well-ventilated areas. Because again, if you're in a non-ventilated areas, you have to have the adequate mitigations in place. Because if you don't have, it will asphyxiate you and you might collapse. All right. And this poster is required to be present in every COSHH cupboard. If we all know that, it kind of tells you the steps to take, and it helps cleaners and everybody, like the people on the picture. It is downloadable for free on the Health and Safety website. So in all our workplaces, if you open the door, you'll find this poster. Okay? All right then, next one. All spillages must be cleared away using safe method outlined in the COSHH assessment. And that's if you're using any substances that can spill, there should be adequate, instructions and mitigations in place. For spillages under 45 liters, the general protocol is to dilute with large quantities of water. Then, depending on your local, that's your council. Some allow 45 liters and below, you can run it down the drain. But my advice is to have disposal methods. In our workplace, we've got companies that dispose of chemicals. It is collected and stored and disposed of in the adequate manner. All right, next. All right, we don't have a test, but we can then open our mics and we can blast away. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Mr. Enos.
Thank you, Enos. Thank you, Mr. Enos.
So if there are any questions, I'm ready to answer any areas that you might want. You can stop sharing so the screen becomes bigger for everybody, and then we can be able to see everyone. I think we've got 2 pages of people. All right, any questions? Or if you have an example that you'd like us to work on, or you are working on and you think maybe can we put it out here and we can think of doing it. I'm more than happy to do one.